welcome back, and thank you very much for staying with us through that break. This is the final segment of Wake Up Sierra Leone, and remember, you can be a part of it. Just join us on our Facebook page, AYV News, where you can drop a comment or a question or your opinion generally about the issues we're discussing in the program, and I'll definitely find time to factor your opinion into the conversation. Now, in our final segment, today is the 11th day in the ongoing voter registration process across the country. This morning, we're going to discuss the challenges, successes, and the way forward. To discuss the ongoing voter registration, in the studio, I'm expecting to have lawyer Rashid Dumbuya, executive for Legal Link, and already in the studio, there's Charles Kev Kobai, Program Officer, National Elections Watch. Good morning, and thank you very much for joining me this morning.
Good morning, Fabian, and good morning, viewers.
And I'm sure that during the 11 days, well, even before the starting of the voter registration process, you've been following also the 11 days.
Yeah, well.
So what's the feedback you would share with the public on the process itself?
Well, new as usual, as you would all know, our activities are centered around elections, observation, and interfacing with the good governance reform processes happening within the country. And so for the voter registration, which started off on the 3rd of September, last week Saturday, new deployed in 10% of the voting registration centers. In those 10%, we deployed stationed observers. And then we also had 2 extra layers of observers that we called supervisors and roving observers. Those roving were responsible to cover areas that did not have station observers deployed. And then we had the supervisor layer supervising the station observers so that we make sure the things that we were to capture in our checklist were really looked at and thoroughly captured. And so from the 3rd, we did observation and we came out with our press release 2 days after, which is in the public domain on our observations in terms of the challenges we observed. There were huge challenges with the working equipment, the VVK and the VIU 820. But more specifically, the VIU 820 was the most challenging equipment in most of the areas that we observed on the day 1 of the phase 1 of the observation. But then going forward on day 2, supervisors went through the different stations. We did not have station observers for day 2 because we staggered our observation between the 1 of phase 1 and then the last day of phase 1, which will be on the 17th. But then there are supervisors roving in between those centers every day. And then on the 8th, they did thorough observation of 10 centers per supervisors. And then today again, they are deployed. Those supervisors will be going around. I've started having feedback from them. And so it has not been a bad situation totally altogether, even though we started from a very bad footing, because across the country had so many challenges. And MACU has the capacity to deploy. So we deployed across the country in all of the 16 political districts, 10% of each district, each center that the phase 1 was to be observed. So, but then within which context, we've been able to engage the ECSL. We profiled some of the solutions to the challenges we observed.
Would link up on that in a moment. We're also expecting to have a representative from ECSL to join us in the studio as we extended invitation to them to, clarify some of the issues emerging in the conversation. And we've also been joined now by lawyer Rashid Dumbuya from Legal Link. Rashid, Kev just shared from their observation.
Thank you for the invitation. I'm grateful to be here.
Yes, thanks for joining us. He just shared their own feedback on the monitoring of the registration process. And like I asked him, I'm sure before the registration process itself, you followed the conversation that led to the process, and it's 11 days already. What feedback can you share on monitoring?
Yes, thank you very much for having us, Legal Link, and I'm happy to share the platform with my colleagues, civil society for new. Yes, we've done our first weekly preliminary report, very comprehensive. There is no report I've seen as comprehensive as ours, I mean, without appearing to be boastful. It's our 15 pages. We've sent it already to NEC. And we tried to address a couple of things. So we went beyond just looking at the minimis. We look at comprehensive things, framework issues, because we believe this is about a fundamental human right of the citizens under Section 31 of the Constitution. Every eligible Sierra Leonean ought to be given this opportunity. So it's a serious matter. So we have the advantage of coming from the legal perspective, which many CSOs are deprived of, and we thank God for that expertise. So we use that as well to look at, in fact, why is NEC having a corruption this time around with NCRA in registering, potential voters? That is a legal question. And we made our inquiries, and from our findings, it's very clear that there's no law that supports and requires NEC to join force with NCRA to do a registration process.
What makes it wrong for ECSL and NCRA to merge and get the registration process
because
done?
we're talking about two separate issues here. I mean, there is the Constitution provides for NEC, now ECSL, to do the registration that leads to public elections, not NCRA. NCRA has a law that allows it to share information to ECSL. And the information are very specific. So the law doesn't even say everything. It talks about deaths, marriage, nullities, births. These are, no, let me explain. This is
so
very,
then, how does it affect the registration process for elections?
Yes, that is the problem now we are having. Because, first of all, we noted in our findings that NEC is doing the work for NCRA. That is a problem. NCRA has its own mandate. So in the polling centers, I speak to you, and many people cannot talk about this. So, and we are proud to say the truth. That's why we stand out. And we don't care how you feel. We are going to speak the truth for the good of Sierra Leone. At the moment, we've sent the to the ECSL chairman. You don't do the work for NCRA. And they're not even familiar with many of these machines. And the people come, now we are having problem. And the problems are so unique that it requires NCRA staff to handle some of these things. So what happens now? NEC is making a lot of referrals to NCRA. But you brought NCRA into the process. So what will I love to see? I've made it in our recommendations. When people come to vote, you think they need to get an NCRA process, send them to NCRA. And then those who have already been captured on NCRA, they move with their process speedily. But you coming with another process to, like, in a way, register people in an NCRA process before coming to you, and you doing that, to us, we think you are clearly doing the work for NCRA, for which you have no mandate to so do.
Could it be to save resources, being that if NCRA does it and ECSL does it, it's going to also cost the country some amount of money? Could it be a smart way to do it, to save resources?
Yeah, so that is the problem, because the Constitution does not allow for that. It's a constitutional provision. Registering voters for public elections is exclusively the purview of ECSL. No other party should be in that polling center. No other party. See the problem? So we have to, and then here is the mistake that ECSL did, which we noted it in our findings. They did not do a pre-test, a pilot survey. You want to take somebody's work or his instruments or his machines and all of these things without you testing them first to know whether in fact it will fit your purpose. It's only on the very day now that we are getting all the problems. Now, for example, I'll give you a problem that they are still grappling with. They're saying that they have solved it, but we know it's not yet solved. The issue about people, Sierra Leoneans who come, that are 17, that will turn 18 before 23rd June 2023. See, now the NCRA gadget will only change 3 things. They will change your number, they will change your disability status, they will change your address. Now, these people that appears, they need to have a change in age. So you see why they were all not registered, and many of them are still fighting There's no way how we can deal with it because now it's on the field that ECSL discover that this kind of people cannot be captured because the design of the gadget does not change age. So now it will require a calibration to take place again from this whole setup in the gadget system to have that feature captured in. So we are not yet late in the day. We still have like 3 more weeks or so. Let's be humble enough to address this issue. If it requires them being registered in a separate process and then captured, that is awesome. But we cannot be staying here, the underage people. These people, many of them are 17, going to turn 18 before the elections. And it's allowed. We have been doing that, and they themselves have said they can. So this is the one problem we noted in our observation, that many people are currently left out in that category. ECSA has to fix something because NCRA gadgets cannot change age. See, if they had done a pilot, perhaps they would have picked that up. But now here is the good thing we also said in our findings. Here is the good thing. There are 2 documents that are in those polling centers that are unique and will save the day. We have the receipt that they give to you when you finish the process. It has numbering. And we have the journal book where they enter your details and your name when you finish. Those 2, in my opinion, and in our opinion as an organization, will save the day, will tell us the actual number of people who have registered in those polling centers and, of course, in every region. So that is this place we have to watch and see and get together. Because for now, the machine, we are having challenges on them. And perhaps that might, in a way, not tell us the actual number of people who have gone through the process. But we will look at the journal book, and then we told political parties and their agents that they should focus on that journal book every day to make sure the actual number is captured. Because that is key in going forward.
I'll come right back to you on this. Kev, he brought up the issue of ECSL doing the work of NCRA. Does this form part of your concerns or things you note as challenges ongoing?
We have noted all of those challenging issues with the EC. Some we brought them out vividly in our press release. Some we had a bilateral discussion with the chairman of the EC. Immediately after the press conference they had, they are making press conference on the voter registration. So, to start with, the issue of the NCRA stuff that my brother raised, there's no NCRA staff within any of the registration centers. It is NEC who chose to use NCRA equipment to roll out their registration process, which has some constitutional implications. Because if you use that and you deprive people to be registered, then you have conflict with the Constitution, which says NEC has the obligation to register eligible voters who avail themselves at the registration center to be registered. So if I am eligible and I avail myself at the center, I ought to be registered by a NEC staff. And so, but then the NEC provided 2 different machines or equipment, the VVK, which captures the old data from the NCRA. By the act of the NCRA and the Public Elections Act of 2012, NEC should take data from the NCRA and inform their register so that they use that data and then look at what they gain from the registration process, match those, clean them by doing adjudication, and then before they present the information to the public and come out with a holistic register for the elections of 2023. So, but then they brought in a byproduct of what they ought to do, having it juxtaposed with the VIU kit. They capture you if you are not in the NCRA process before. You get to the center, they send you to that's the mismatch. The constitutional provision, which my brother mentioned in section 31, gives right to NEC also. Once you avail yourself, the first process is the electoral process. Handle the electoral part of why this person is in your center to register, and then you register the person. If now you want the person to be captured in the civil register, then you can send the person to the civil register. But it is done the other way around. If you come, you are not in that data on the VVK, They send you first to the VIU. The VIU should process you before you come back to be captured in the VVK.
I wish the invitation we extended to the ECSL, they would have sent a representative here to have this conversation. But I'm showing your engagements. You engage with the ECSL. What explanation have they sort of provided for all they're doing using the NCRA machine instead of, you know, ECSL conducting their own separate registration exclusively for voting? And
in fact, for the ECSL, that was why they clarified at the press conference that they did not deploy any NCRA staff in their centers. They are making use of ad hoc staff that they recruited and deployed. But then again, they are advancing the point that they want everybody to be captured within the civil register. So once they create the voter register, you ought to be captured in the civil register to show proof of citizenship, that you are a citizen, and therefore, if you are a citizen, it's one step of you being qualified to be eligible to be registered, which is really not a constitutional provision that stands out. The Constitution says you should be a citizen at 18, or you will turn 18 at the eve of election. The Constitution does not say you should be in the civil register before you come to register with the electoral process. So NEC is saying they only brought up this because there is an act of the National Civil Registration of 2016 that also says they should share data with all relevant institutions. And then in the Public Elections Act of 2012, it also compels the ECSL to take data from the source of the NCRA so that it informs the preparation of their register for voters. Again, the issue of the first-time voters we raised with the ECSL, according to them, at the time they were installing the software in the VVK, they had not captured that aspect of the first-time voters who were in the VVK or in the NCRA process, but yet have not been captured in the VVK. So they have brought in another software that they are now going to deploy across the country that will be able to capture first-time voters. I've been having feedback. I told you we have deployed again today. Our supervisors, they are in the field. The take I'm having, I only want to appeal also to the conscience of the ECSL. Let it be done holistically. If you are addressing the issues of first-time voters, because yesterday, before I left the office, I received a copy of a letter written by the mayor of the Freetown City Council to the ECSL, which they copied new, raising concerns on first-time voters that have been excluded from the process. And by constitutional tenet, that is also wrong. And so, but NEC has been resolving the issue by the reports I'm having. But it has not been, so I've asked everybody to send from their different locations because the process started off this morning. But from what the feed I'm getting from Kenneman, in the constituency 019, Ward 055, Ward 054, Ward 045, they are now comfortably registering first-time voters. But this should cut right across because it is not only Kenema district that was affected with the issue of first-time voters not being captured in the VVK. So if you are resolving it, let it be a holistic approach so that every district that has been deprived of first-time voters being captured in the VVK process to now being able to resolve so that we have the issue of first-time voters addressed nationally, not district by district. Let it be done at a national case so that everybody is captured that ought to be captured in that process. So this is just a word of encouragement we're sending out to the ECSL. Make sure your approach of resolving, because we raised this with the chairman of the ECSL, the methodology your staff are deploying in resolving issues is not consistent. It does not cut right across. In one station in a particular district, they will use one methodology to resolve issues. You go to another station, it's different. You go to another district, it's different.
Do you see the need for an extension of the registration process?
We have called on the ECSL to consider that very strongly, because some areas for day 1, day 2, day 3 of the registration process did not register, did not open, because they had challenges with the VVK and the VIU 820. Some areas for 2 days, some areas for the whole day of the first day could not open. Some had material deployment very late in the early hours of the 3rd of September. So it took them up to 3 o'clock before materials could reach to some hinterlands of the districts in order to start the process. So it's a challenge that the ECSL must look at, and we have given them a suggestion that they need to consider very strongly extending the days that people have lost already in the process. So that, because it is not the making of the registrants, it is the making of the institution itself that is charged with the responsibility of registering registrants who would avail themselves. So if somebody comes into your station and is not being captured, you have the responsibility to make sure that person is captured. So these are some of the things that we think the ECSL must jump up to very quickly to be able to address. Look at the first-time voters issues across the country, address that, install those softwares on the VVK so that first-time voters can be captured and register. Again,
at this point, are you satisfied with the response rate of the ECSL, especially concerning the issues that CSOs raise regarding the registration process?
Of course, partly because they have committed themselves publicly that they have noted those challenges, and they know there are challenges that exist. But as any normal process, you would expect those challenges to evolve, but then they are going to challenge those challenges headlong to be able to resolve them. But then we are 11 days into the process. Some of these challenges still are showing their ugly heads, particularly for the first-time voters. There is another challenge that has emerged in the last 3 days. That is those slips that Rashid spoke of. In some centers, they are not available. They've shortened. And so they will only sign on a piece of paper. They stamp it with the ECSS stamp and then give it to you, which is not really proper because it has not been approved. So what if tomorrow you take that to ECSL to say, it was given to me by an ECSL staff at the center, and then you were rejected that you did not go through the official process. So they should have the receipt or the slip that has been issued out before now, which is the authentic one from the ECSL, should be replicated across the board. So if it is short in supply, they should reprint. We have a government printing press that does those printings. Go back and do the printing so that you have enough materials available at the centers that no one single registrant comes in and is deprived of any of the steps within the process. It is a holistic process. So once the person starts one step of it, you should take that person through the process. The person completes and you give him or her a slip to be kept so that when adjudications are done and they want to now publish those registrants at the different centers, you'll be able to go and verify, and then you have your ID card. But without which, you have challenges at the end of the day in obtaining your ID card from the ECSL.
Now, some of those challenges, post-election, some of the issues that emerge post-election are sort of like sown during times like this. Before we got to the registration process, we still left off on the statistics Sierra Leone, on the census of Sierra Leone. And now we've gotten to a point where there are disagreements about the figures in certain areas. Now, if that comes back to not correlate with the registration, it doesn't tally, that in itself is going to be an issue post-election, where we get to see candidates saying, oh, there were a lot of irregularities with election, blah, 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 blah. Are these issues coming up in the conversation with ECSL?
So again, let's get it straight. There's a difference between the registration process for elections and whatever midterm census result we have. The ECSL, again.
Though a difference, there's still a relationship.
Yes, but let me land. Give me a minute, let me just bring in the issues out clearly. For the ECSL, again, even though we are challenging the legality and the inclusion of the VIU, it also helps out. At the end of the day, it is capturing every registrant's bio features. All of your 10 fingers are captured, which the midterm census did not do. The midterm census was just a figure extracted from the head of a family that was interviewed. So, for example, if you, unfortunately, I was not counted, but if peradventure they had come to my house and they asked me, it is the figure I tell them is part of my household, that's the figure they record. But for the NCRA, you don't record anybody's information in absentia. The person has to be at the center. You go through that process of verification, and then they capture all your details. So you will notice, or you will find out at the end of the day, because this is a head count process of the ECSL, it is possible that the registration process will capture more people than what the result of the midterm census is showing. And mark you, not everybody was captured again on the midterm census, because we had people who had challenged the process, and including our institution knew that that process, instead of wasting money, public's fund on the midterm census, we should have strengthened the NCRA process, because we knew the NCRA at the end of the day will also largely inform the electoral process of 2023 and elections beyond 2023. So it should have been more germane for the government to have spent money to build up the infrastructure of the NCRA so that we have credible data captured of every Sierra Leonean and all foreigners resident in Sierra Leone. By the time we go into elections, we will not have even had a situation wherein you come for NEC to create centers to register people. NEC would have just gone back to that data and see that, yes, every Sierra Leonean is captured here. We can now borrow our data from here and clean it and be assured that, yes, this is representative of the true sense of qualified, eligible voters according to the constitutions of Sierra Leone. But that has not been the case. Okay. So the issue of the midterm census eventually would have to surface again. It will be an ugly challenge for the outcome of our elections, but nevertheless, it is what comes out of the electoral process from the registration centers that will inform how our governance will be run at the end of the day.
Thank you, Kev. Continue to stay with us. Rashid, I'd like to pick your brain on that as well. The same question. It's, as Kev mentioned, it's not the same, but somehow it's got a relationship. There's somewhere they merge. And post-election, we hear all these stories of overvoting, or this does not tally with this, and so on and so on. Do these conversations come up with ECSL? And what do you foresee ahead of this?
Yeah, so that is why it is so key for the real data in terms of eligible voters to be properly ascertained in this exercise. And so we, as a CSO, we are very jealous about that, because that is our focus. And the other day, even in our report, we had to call on you, because and this is the backdrop. You know, I had an opportunity to explain better to my colleagues the other day. Now, what we should jealously guard, and all of us, is the real data. And to me, the book at the moment, the journal, where they enter everyone that has gone through the process, is the only savior we have at the moment. Now, there are two, largely in our observation, we always saw two-party agents, ABC and CLP, largely. The others were almost roaming, stationed ones. Now, we have also complained of arguments between them. And also on that book, people are like playing around with it, not even allowing people to see exactly what the numbers. So we are calling on you the other day, say, we want to see, because we know they are the leading watchdog in this process, a third person inside there. So that at the end of the day, that data, that number will be properly accounted for, because we know that is what we'll get to know the actual people who are eligible to vote, and then we now match and see the census data that we have been given. So I agree with you, there's a correlation between the NEC data, although at a microcosm level, because it's only dealing with people who are eligible to vote. You know, the census talks about everyone, but this one is about 18 years and above. But we want to still know, because again, it will inform the redistricting processes and all of these things that NEC will have to do going forward. If we have an representation in terms of the figure, and then this figure tells us otherwise, I'm sure that will inform policy change going forward and also directives of ECSL. That is why it's good that we jealously guard it. So we don't want to hear APC person telling us one figure, SLB telling us one figure, NEC tells us one figure. Then we don't have an independent person that will say, I watched it from my perspective, and I'm here for the people of Sierra Leone. This is exactly the figure in our. So that is where our fear at the moment, because we know there are discrepancies at the moment on that, and many people are giving their own figures. And the other day, in fact, one of the children we visited, there were complaints from some of these participants that they were not having access to see that number in the journal as of that day of registrants. So these are the things. And I hope my colleagues will understand the angle we are coming from, because we want to see an independent arbiter. And NEW has been that watchdog. I mean, in elections in particular, they have that capacity. We have seen several times they come in and make a defense and set the record straight when we have different versions going forward. So I agree with you. There's a relationship between the census results we already have and this data that we want to know. So that is why we are calling on ECSL to up their game. It's not even good for them at the moment. Almost every report that is out is nailing ECSL. And they themselves have admitted in their press conference that there are challenges. It's not a good thing a place to be. As an integrity institution.
However, Fabian, I don't want us to have the public confused about the midterm census. Midterm generally, or censuses are done to inform development projections. Yeah, and for Sierra Leone, in the context of our elections, it only informs boundary delimitation.
No, in this case,
for the outcome,
in this case, Kev, what makes it, what really brings the concern is the disagreements on the just concluded census about figures that allegedly are downplayed.
Great.
So
this is why,
unlike generally with census activities in countries every time, the fact that people have been alleging that figures are downplayed, if that turns out to be true, or those allegations still stand in the minds of those people, post-election, you don't want a situation where, for example, you're saying this is Fabian Town, and then Fabian Town, according to census, says there are 50 people living there. And then with your election now, obviously you're expecting that not all those 50 people would register to vote or are eligible. Then you come to a situation now where you have 65 people registering to vote.
That's why you need to give me time to explain.
No, I just want you to get the context. It's not the census as usual, because again, everyone in Sierra Leone agrees that this census has had a lot of issues, a lot of questions put to it. So that's why it's unlike other censuses, it comes back to the same issue for post-election.
So that's why you need to give me a chance to explain. I told you already, census has nothing to determine the outcome of our elections. It is the process of the ECSL that will determine our elections. That's why voters, our registrants, now have this compelling responsibility to go out and register and disprove the outcome of the midterm census. Because if people go out and register in their number, mark you, when the midterm census provisional results were out, NEW challenged it also. We brought out analysis giving, for example, for Freetown, the population of the midterm census for Freetown was defeated by the 2018 voter registration population. The Freetown voter population in 2018 surpasses that of the midterm census of 2021. And the midterm looks at the holistic population of Freetown. The ECSL only looks at eligible voter population. So how would an eligible voter population surpass a midterm census? It
So
tells
that's
you,
exactly the
I'm
point.
coming. It tells you the midterm is faulty. So we have a responsibility as people who are eligible to vote, go out in your numbers, register in your numbers. Once the ECSL comes out with its voter register and say Freetown is 1 million registered population, you have ridiculed the midterm census. If it says Kenema is 500,000 voter register, you have ridiculed the midterm census result. So it is the responsibility rests squarely on the voter population. Go out and register in your number to disprove what some of us have been critiquing of the midterm census.
Yeah, but Kev, just a minute on that note. So it's not really just the people, which I want to add, because the people are now turning out. We are seeing massive in our report is there. But it's also about protecting them when they come out and making sure that they are captured in time and that number is protected. That's where we're having a challenge. And ECSM must stop that behavior. It's wrong. When people have suffered and come out, you have to make sure you take pride in that and let them see that you are protecting the process.
Of course,
so that they are captured. So 17 to 18 are coming out and they are not having that opportunity. That is a problem. First time voters are having challenges in the process. It's very long. Why? Because you brought an NCRA process inside. People have also evidence. People that took up to 3 hours. Some are in the station. Some are even got to be corruption is also festering in the process. People are buying spaces. Can you imagine why? Because NEC make a protracted process. They don't need to buy space to queue up. This is what we are saying. You must come. And then why the one policy? Well, just give me 1 minute. We also said it in our report. Why the one policy, one center, one machine policy? I don't understand that. It's so frustrating. People are going to...
How does that equate to corruption when it's not, it's not the ECSL staff that are deployed there that are selling spaces? It's people who see this as a business opportunity, who wake up in the morning and go and queue. And then those who wake up late and come to register, you buy my space. How does that interpret
So here is the complicity that leads to that. Because you did a process that is protracted and cost time and, of course, all the other things you have to put into it. People have jobs to do. People have things to do. So what happens now? People are exploited. I'm not saying it's easy that they are exploiting people. People are there, standing there and taking queue and giving slips, and people are buying to just keep space. In Lumley, one of the stations we monitored, people are queuing there. So they have these youth boys that they pay. They come and stand in that queue 2 a.m.
Is that not a business idea?
So what I'm saying is we need to go through this for a registration process.
All right, gentlemen,
let's have it in a simple way.
In a moment, we'll
so
come back to wrap up this
that.
conversation. I'll read out some of the comments on our Facebook page, and then I'll get your recommendations as we try to continue the registration process. But it's 9:45. We'll take a quick commercial break, and we'll be right back. Stay with us. All right, welcome back. Thank you very much for staying with us through that break. This is Wake Up Sierra Leone here on AYV Television and Radio. Kev, I recall earlier you spoke about the first-time voters that are not being captured, but somehow they've been able to find a solution in Kenema. And that in itself, the sensitivity between APC and SLPP, everybody is looking out to point to see, oh, that person is doing this to cheat me. That in itself being an issue, and then ECSL not replicating that solution in Kenema countrywide.
And that's fact. And therefore, we are worried that it is not being resolved holistically. Any challenge in the process must be treated nationally. You don't factor one district above the others, you create tension. And then people will begin to question, why are you doing this? So if it is resolved in Kenema, it ought to also be resolved in every other part of the country. Again, the first-time voters who have been availing themselves and being deprived, to be honest, there's every need for legal action. If you go, because the Constitution says, avail yourself. If you avail yourself and you are not being registered, you are rejected, you can seek redress through the court. So that NEC tells the court now, why were you not in position to register first-time voters when they avail themselves at your center to be registered? So these are steps that we can also use to have NEC really register people. And one of the things that NEC has done to shoot himself or herself in her leg is the fact that the law provides in the Electoral Act of 2012 that if you go to the station, you don't have your birth certificate, your ID card, your passport, a religious leader of that community can come and stand in testimony of you. Or your teacher, your head teacher, or you have the counselor will stand to vouch for you. But now NEC is kicking against those, that people are misusing it, not counting the fact that it is a provision of an act. So you only need to work around that situation to make sure people don't abuse it, but you cannot stop it. You cannot say chiefs cannot identify when it is a provision in your own very act. It is also provided for in the Constitution, knowing the dynamics of our country that not everybody has access to birth certificate or passport or national identity card. So those provisions were added up to the law so that you don't disenfranchise people from the process. So NEC needs, or the ECSL needs to really step up and go back to the drawing board to address the issue of first-time voters who will turn 18.
I'll quickly read some of the messages on Facebook and give both of you a few minutes to respond as we wrap up.
Okay.
Care Bangura says, what on earth would you not have challenges in public activities? Kamara Charles says, the man from News Objective, whilst the man from Legal Link is not. Patrick Musa Momodu says, the outcry of the public on the issue of voter registration is too much in the public, especially on the issue of the first-time voters. ECSL should do all they can to address these issues before they start the second phase. ECSL should remember that election starts with voter registration, and election is the only way we can exercise our franchise right and the decision that will affect our life for the next 5 years. Amadou Kagbo says, Lawyer Rashid, did I hear you say that most of the centers have only SLPP and APC reps? So where is the concerns from NGC's Dr. Bright coming from? Social media? Salona Conti. Kamara Charles says, you guys are not honest to this nation. You were here when the mayor and her party asked their supporters not to allow them to be counted. Muhammad John says, legal, people fail to come out to be counted. Okay, Patrick Musa Momodu says, how could we go out and register in number when the ECSL machine is rejecting us in numbers, especially the first-time voters? Very sad. Eddie Grant says, ECSL is not involved in the selling of queue places. People are doing to benefit themselves. Ibrahim Ishmael Bangura says, this is the first time in history voter registration process that is faulty throughout the northwestern region. Evidence visible throughout. It's a deliberate plot. I'll just keep that. Well, these are all the messages we'll take for now. And quickly in
I want to start by thanking our viewers who've taken their time out to also send in messages. For the first-time voters, I really are in the pity with them. I empathize with their situation because once you come out with that zest, you want to be captured, sorry, and then the system is not taking you in, it's frustrating. But then I would say there is another mode of redress. If the ECSL does not register you, you can now face the court, and the court can ask the ECSL to register you because it is your right. The Constitution has provided you that opportunity to register. If you avail, you are rejected for obvious reasons. Use the court system as well. But again, we're encouraging the ECSL. Do not allow us to reach to that stage where you'll see many lawsuits being filed against the ECSL even before we start the elections proper. Make sure you address the challenges of the machines, take on board those first-time voters, and then we have a very good register for our elections 2023.
Thank you very much, Kev. Yes.
Yes, so thanks for the texters. These days when you are brutal with the truth, you are deemed to be subjective. But Legal Link stands out for one thing. We call things as they are. And our report is one that people will look at and see the realities of what's happening in the centers. So we're not saying we did not see roaming NGC guys, but most of the people who are stationed are SLP and APC party agents. Now, here is what I want to leave with ECSL. This is a constitutional mandate. You don't want every facet and their report to be bashing at you at this imago stage. It's a sign that you are going to do a bad job. So let them do a turnaround. You know, and the mistake was they did not do a pre-test, a pilot survey, to see whether in fact there will be challenges as we roll this out. You know, being an NCRA process into a registration process. That is where they missed it. They must be humble enough to accept that. And we still have 3 more weeks or so. And we know we are going to have some extensions. Let them fix this properly and see. Look at me now. There was nothing wrong to say, when you come and you're not registered with NCRA, to say, all right, go to NCRA in their office and register. Then you come, then we can now register you our own. There was no sense in having an NCRA process within that police center. Just say, go to NCRA office, do your registration, come with the slip, and then we take you further with our own process. That would have been better, because the act says, just give me a minute, please. The act says you get information from NCRA on few things, births, deaths, nullities, to update. It's not NCRA that is giving you the data. You just need some information to update your own data that you have independently generated. And that is where the problem lies. And we have spoken out the truth, and we have given them the answer. It's up to them to now implement, and we trust that they will be humble enough to do a work that every Sierra Leonean will be proud of going forward. And we'll definitely continue this conversation as the registration process continues. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for being a part of the program this morning. Grateful. Well, this is where we would end today's edition of Wake Up Sierra Leone. Thanks to our guests for being a part of the program, to our sponsors, and to all our viewers and listeners. Our quote for today says, "The ballot is stronger than the bullet." And that's an apt quote from Abraham Lincoln, former U.S. president. Have a good day, and remember to go out and register to vote. Cheers.